he got really defensive, and he was like, oh, how could people say this about me? I love my wife, all that. And what I was thinking, sort of in line with this book here, that may very well have been the case. And as far as I know, he and his wife are still together. But the point is that in his head, it wasn't, oh, I'm getting back at my wife or something. It was like, oh, I'll get some action on the side. Oh, maybe it'll happen after work. Nobody will know. Nobody will say anything. And again, when he says that, he may sincerely mean it, but the point is he's still doing something else in his self-interest, which morally would be at odds with that. So,
yeah. And this is one thing that some humans have a tendency to put us separate from the animal kingdom. And as you mentioned, where that quote where 90% chimp and then 10% ants. We look at other animals. Other animals engage in war. Other animals have different kind of social interactions. Certain animals are monogamous. Certain animals are polygamous. Certain animals are engage in serial monogamy. With our brains, there's almost no behavior pattern that humans have developed that is also not present in some other life form in some other way. Because I think higher than the fact that the social constructs that we've created with civilization are based on our biology, to save our biology, we are also sharing this environment of the earth. We are also earthlings above animals, other things that organize, not even just life forms, because there's some certain structures that are inanimate, that are not alive, rocks and minerals and things like that, where they seem to mimic certain things that we create, that we find effective in different ways. Because there's just certain things that being on the earth, that environment will dictate certain patterns and certain behaviors that are more optimal to this environment, to flourishing in this environment. But that's just to get to this was, I think if we realize that, we can see that, yes, sure, if you take away religion, if you take away the state, if you take away these structures of punishment and things like that, it's not just going to be chaos and destruction in the end, because you can find other life forms that don't have a state government, that don't have religions, that don't have commandments and things like this, that aren't just constantly raping and pillaging everything they come across.
Yeah.
Those animals still have certain biological understandings and limits that we as humans have codified in the social constructs that we have in civilizations. Yeah,
definitely.
And that's similar to education. There is a need to learn information. All these other animals happen to teach the next generations of their life forms to continue existing. We are all the 0.00001% of life forms that have existed on Earth that went extinct without any actual human direct involvement, that have found ways to teach their offspring without institutions of higher learning, without college, without free, universal free college education. They've been able to do it. So sure, we have codified and created the structure of higher education, but I mean, if we take that away, we'd have to take away teaching kids, teaching information. There's still other ways to actually achieve that. Some ways could be better, some ways could be worse, and that's kind of what we're discussing here. Yeah.
Well, and to sort of elaborate on Jonathan Haidt's point, what he says in his book, The Righteous Mind, he talks about how there were actually more individualistic insects. We know because we found them preserved in amber, fossils, all that. But the theory at the moment is that the more individualistic insects died out because they, of course, dealing with predators, they couldn't fend for themselves, they couldn't support themselves as well. So at some point, insects, I don't know if they figured it out. I mean, they don't have much intelligence, but somehow insects like the ants, termites, all this, they ended up working together, and some way or another, it was decided for the survival of their species that if they work together, that's how they would survive and thrive. So that's why you have a queen, drones, workers, all that. And the thing is, again, it's like an individual drone will sacrifice itself if it means saving the queen, because that means saving the whole colony. Now with humans, it's more complicated because, again, we're selfish being primates, but at the same time, we have to work together, because way back when people figured out, well, okay, I can't just live in the wilderness by myself, hunt and everything. If I work with a group of people, I can hunt. We can hunt bigger animals together. We can farm together. We can build housing together. So it makes sense to work together. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we obviously still have warlike tendencies and we still fought each other. But at the same time, we are inclined towards cooperation for that reason. And like we've touched on it a little bit in other discussions, but the whole division of labor thing, like nobody wants to be 100% self-sufficient. I mean, do you want to make your own clothes, generate your own power, grow all your own food? It's like at some point you would realize this isn't worthwhile use of your time. It's beneficial to outsource those things to other people. And what's interesting too is some people, I know Gad Sad talks about this, that some think our intelligence actually evolved so we could manipulate each other in order to get some of these things done, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's manipulation, usage of tools. These are all positive things. And I think we have human resource departments because humans are actually the most effective tool. And I thought about this a long time ago. It also reminded me you're talking about the structures with collective animals like ants. And I was thinking, okay, matriarchies tend to be collectivist. And when you look at these collective organisms, collective life forms, they tend to be skewed greatly where I don't know if there's an example where one in hundreds of females. It's normally the inverse where these are tied around a much fewer females and majority of the species are males that serve the female. So there could be something in feminists that are kind of wanting that collectivist type of thing where they build societies where they have hundreds of men serving them in some sort of way. So you might have a situation where maybe, matriarchal societies tend to be more collectivist, tend to have that kind of situation. And are we already living in something similar to that, where you have men in general are people who predominantly pay tax? They're predominantly the tax base of, I think, all countries where taxes exist are males, and females tend to be more tax consumers. So maybe you have a situation where you have flexible kind of situations where, look at the black community, black queen, and the black queens of the family, then they're getting out of the wealth, and a lot of support from the different societies, from different structures in society that are created by men, are manned by men, and the resources coming from men. Like there could be some kind of situation in there where that's kind of tied, where you have these informal kind of things where you can say, okay, this female is benefiting from the resources of this. How many men does it actually take are involved in the process of from mining the resources, inventing the resources, creating the resources, providing the service, coming back to the female? And it might be a situation where there's actually a whole lot of constantly fluctuating movements of those kind of structures. I don't know. I want to look into more.
Well, I would argue too, with this example you're mentioning, it's also a case of rent seeking and dispersed cost concentrated benefits. It's, tax all these other people and give it to women or whatever. But then it's like, all these other people have all this money, so if we take some from them and give it to me, it's benefit. They can rationalize in their heads that, well, they have more than they need, so it's fine. I'll get some benefits which are owed to me for this reason. So I think it's another form of rent seeking in that.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.